Beautiful people, welcome back to Organizing an ADHD Brain, where the perfect place to start is right where you are. I'm your host, Megs Crawford. I'm a professional organizer, an ADHD coach, and a fellow work in progress. Because let's be honest, we're all work in progress. This season 3, we're talking about the messy middle. Not about the before, not about the after, but all of the stuff that comes in between. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff that comes in between that perfect before and after picture. So let's jump right in. Welcome back to the show. Before we jump in, I want to tell you a little bit about my client, Carolyn. Her and I met in the first fall when I became an organizer. This was just a couple months after I had left my corporate career, and I didn't truly feel like I knew what I was doing, but I felt very confident all at the same time. And we talk about the story of how we met in our conversation, but it was truly incredible. I am so grateful that I was able to work with her and build the friendship that we did. Some of the things that we didn't talk about in the show this week was going through her knitting collection and looking at all of her many colors of yarn and figuring out which colors she wanted to keep, which projects that were unfinished that she wanted to keep, or maybe put in a place that made sense to finish some of those projects. Organizing all of her Lego projects. So some of them were in the works, and she got this really cool cart so that she could have medicines on one spot and then a space to organize her Legos on the top so it's easy to move from one place to another. And it was really pretty amazing. It was so amazing to watch her grow through this process and grow in her confidence that she had in herself, see things that initially would have taken her so long to make a decision on that took her no time at all as we got into it. And then naturally, when we took breaks, it took a little bit of time to get back into it. But as soon as we got back into the groove, it made sense to let things go. It made sense to know where to put things, and so on and so forth. I'm so grateful to have this conversation with Carolyn today. I no longer do in-person organizing as much, but this is a really good example of what you can do. Whether you hire a coach like me virtually or you're hiring someone to come in and support you through the process, asking for help is incredible. It is such a valuable tool in getting to this next step, because oftentimes we get in our own brains, and even if we do really well in the beginning, sometimes it can be very hard to keep going. And that's why community is so important. And that can be community in our friends, community in our family. If they're supportive, right? They have kind words to say to us, but also different communities that are online or in your actual community, like going out and, meeting other moms at the school or meeting other people that you might see in the grocery store, finding ways to make and build connections with them as well. Let's jump into the episode. Welcome back to the podcast. I am here with one of my favorite humans, a friend of mine named Carolyn Bedingfield. I'm so excited to be chatting with her today. She was one of my very first clients when I started my in-person organizing career.
Yeah.
She is the mom of 3, an incredible woman, an advocate, and oh my gosh, what can't you do? There's so many things. You are a knitter. You are an artist. You are a Lego builder. You are a grandma. You are an amazing woman in so many different ways. And I'm so happy to call you a friend. So welcome to the show.
Oh.
Thanks for being willing to be on the show today. Carolyn is a true example of getting started a little bit later in life as far as decluttering and figuring out the organizing space. But the way that we met was under some pretty unique circumstances. So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about how we met and how I started working for you?
Yeah, I think you must have known my daughter from the brewery days, and she brought you over. I don't exactly remember the circumstances, but she brought you over. I think it was a couple weeks after my husband had died. And we just kind of sat and talked about getting my space, which is a small 2-bedroom, 700 square foot apartment, into an order that made me feel comfortable, and to kind of clean out. I mean, this sounds weird, but clean out my husband's stuff and make it more my space so I wouldn't have to deal with that. I mean, you helped me get through that and realize that I didn't need his notes from when he did his PhD, because they meant nothing to me. I didn't understand what he was doing. So I could get rid of those, but I still have his thesis or whatever you call it. That's like an example of what we worked on. But then the first thing that we did was you gifted me 3 hours and we did my pantry. And every time I go in there, I see your handwriting on the stickers on my flour and coconut flour and almond flour.
Yeah. Well, you had these really cute jars that you wanted to use, and you bought the little tops for them. And you had all of these great intentions. And I'm like, oh, we got to use these. We got to put them to use to make this happen. So we met your daughter from the brewery. My husband and I started working at Pikes Peak Brewing in Monument.
Right.
When I first moved out to Colorado, him and I fell in love. And Lindsay, your daughter, was one of my favorite humans. She always had the biggest smile on her face. So when she called me to come and check out the house, I was like, yeah, heck yeah. One thing I remember very specifically is, you didn't spend a lot of time in the living room. You didn't spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I remember you saying you wanted to cook, but it just wasn't as exciting anymore in your life. And then there was the room upstairs that you wanted to clear out, but you didn't spend a lot of time in there, but could be a guest room. But when we walked in to your room, the room you're sitting in right now, it was so colorful. And I just remember the squishmallows, and I remember the paintings on the wall and the plants, and you have these beautiful purple curtains that have little leaves crawling all over them. And that stood out in my mind. And so when you said it wasn't the right time, I was like, yeah, I hear you, right? I was continuing to build the business and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I want to go over and help, and let's just make this happen. And that was one of the best decisions I could have ever done, because we continued to work through the rest of the house. And gosh, it was so fun. We made some real headway in there.
Yes, we did. Many, many hours. It was cathartic. There was tears, but we got through it and I felt good about it. And just seeing things in order and not so cluttered. Well, I'm kind of back to cluttered a little bit, but I feel okay about it. Anyway, it really helped my mood because I did feel overwhelmed with stuff. I think at that time, fall of 23 and early 2024 that we were working, I was back and forth to Tennessee to help out with my dad, who was at the time like 98. It was just a process that we got through together and developed a really great friendship. And it just changed my life. It really did. And your focus on how you think about things, what are things, and that you don't have to keep all those things. It's not dishonoring anyone to get rid of things.
Oh my gosh. Ugh. For those of you listening, I've never seen someone with the most beautiful curated plant collection in my entire life. You have these incredible plants, and that was cool because we were able to find all these cool contraptions that you had bought for them and put them up all over the house. So not only did you have plants in your bedroom, but they were at all different levels. And then in the kitchen and in the front room and the living room. It's fascinating. Like the color started to expand to different spaces as we continued to work together. Actually, when we did the pantry, I was like, oh, well, what if you got something colorful, like a rug in the pantry? And you were like, yeah, immediately. And you found like the most colorful rug and you put it in there to brighten up the space. That was so cool.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
If you're enjoying this episode, I have a quick favor to ask. Could you take just a minute to leave a review? I know. Every podcast asks, but here's the deal. Your review helps other ADHD brains like ours find this show. Plus, reading them seriously makes my day. So if something in this episode has helped you, made you laugh, or even made you feel seen, let me know by leaving a quick review. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you more than you know. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, putting up some of my china, my tea sets in the pantry. I mean, you wouldn't think of doing that.
Yeah. We'll talk about so much more, but you mentioned the tea set. And I remember we had to take a little bit of time off because you got diagnosed with breast cancer during this time. And that was ridiculous and awful. And also, you had done so much work to get yourself into a position where you could rest in your home, right? But then we
Yeah.
did eventually start working together again. And I remember the first time it was probably months after you had been going through the treatments and finally feeling a little bit
Right.
better. So I was asking you about something and you were like, I'll just let it go. Like the way that you said it, I think it was these plates with like birds on them or flowers on them. And they were sayings or descriptions of the flowers or where they came from. And it was hard for you to let it go, but you were just trying to tell me that you wanted to let it go because you knew that was like the right thing to do. And I was like, no, let's talk about this. Let's make it so that you can get behind the letting go of it. Like, why are you doing it? We're not just letting go just to let go. We're letting go because we've made peace with letting go and that this makes sense for you.
Yeah.
Do you remember that at all?
Yes, I do. I just remember getting through, I want to say almost trauma, but I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just seeing all that stuff again. What had happened was we had a storage unit for 20 years with tons of stuff in it. Some of it was my late husband's, or most of it was, and like old tools and stuff. Like, what do I do with that? I live in an apartment, and all of his school stuff, his college and masters, and it was traumatic getting through that. But I had lots of friends help me with that process, friends and family. I mean, one time, I want to say 8 people showed up at my storage unit, and all I had to do was sit there and they would bring things to me. And I think this was in October of 23 because my brother said, I'll pay for one more month, but you got to get all that crap out of there. Because it was almost as much as the rent on my apartment. So anyway, we got rid of that. But some of it came to the apartment, and it was bringing up old memories because some of it I hadn't seen in 20 years. It had been sitting in there because we moved from a big house, put all of our stuff in storage, and then took off in our Subaru and went on a trip around the country and stayed in Miami for a year. And then we went to Arizona for a little while. And then we came back and moved into an apartment, and we didn't get rid of this stuff. So I had to deal with it. And part of my goal, I know I'm getting off subject. It's the whole ADHD thing, right? I have the Swedish death cleaning books, and my daughter, who, Lindsay, has no filter on her mouth. She told me one time, she said, you better get rid of all this shit because I don't want to have to deal with it when you die. So I've got that in my head, and I work towards that goal. And then another thing I'm working towards is that I may move to Florida to a tiny home on my son's property. And it would be probably between 300 and 500 square feet. And so I have to downsize even more. So it's a process going through and looking at stuff and saying, what am I going to do with this? Just minimizing because it feels good.
Yeah.
For me, it helps clear my head.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so huge. It's like each and every one of our things, while we sometimes want to keep it because we're afraid that we're going to miss the memory, sometimes we keep things that we don't ever want to remember the memory again. Like, that's actually something I don't want to come up, but we then avoid it because we're like, we don't feel like we can let it go.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's such a fascinating connection that we have to stuff that doesn't go away just because people tell us that's weird. It's still there. But when you develop that self-trust within yourself, what you did, the more we work together, the easier it was for you to decide, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. But you kept the things that did make sense for you. And we were able to decorate your life with it. Like your rock collection, that was one of my favorite things that we ever decorated your space with. And we collected all of them as we were going through. We weren't able to do it right away, but after maybe 3 or 4 sessions, we had them all in a space and we're like, this is it. We could do this.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And the Vaseline glass collection, that was so cool because, well, you got a black light or what is it that makes them glow, and put it in the cabinet with all of my mom's Vaseline glass. That's what we call it. I think other people call it uranium glass. And that was really cool. But you know what? I'm getting ready to move that. I'm going to switch my rock collection over to the window and move the Vaseline glass over to where the rocks and Legos were and plants. So just so I can, when I'm sitting on the couch, I can see the uranium glass. Then the other thing that I have that I'm sure people can relate to this, because I'm 70, I just turned 70 a month ago. I found a box, and I don't know where it was when we were doing stuff, Megs. It has taxes from 91 to, I want to say 97 in nice little, envelopes. There's the receipts, there's the tax forms, and they just have been sitting in a box.
Yeah. I think that's part of the barrier too, right? We keep these things because we're supposed to for a certain amount of time. But then there's nothing on our calendar reminding us that now it's time to go through all the old tax stuff. But then that's something we put off because we don't have a shredder hanging around at home and we have to find someone who's going to do it in some place that like there's so many barriers to us getting this stuff out. So it's such a real thing that happens. Yeah. I bet there's so many people listening. They're like, yeah, there's so much paperwork that I haven't gone through and stuff that oftentimes it's paperwork from a spouse that's, no longer here or parents that are no longer here. And I have to go through their thing. Like there's so many aspects that we put off because, well, there's no deadline on it, right? We'll get to it when we can. And then we never necessarily get to it.
Yeah. Now, the word you used was barriers. I run into that a lot. Right now, I have too many plants. They reproduce, So I'm trying to downsize a little bit. And it's several steps to get to the point where I actually take this plant and repot it and then use that pot for another plant. And it's getting through the process of doing it all, like which soil mix does this plant need and what does this plant need? And it can be really overwhelming. And it seems silly for such a thing as plants, but it's getting through that process and the barriers that pop up. And sometimes I just shut down.
No, but the barrier to the letting go of the plants, that's huge because plants light up your life and it's a lot to take care of so many. And you've got so many like cool, different, it makes a lot of sense. Well, let me ask you. So when you look at the plants, do you feel like you need to get it all done at once?
That thought comes in my head, but I know that it's not something I can do. And I have to break it down into rooms, into types of plants.
And then that gets overwhelming too, because you're breaking it up that way, like different categories. What's the overall goal with the plants?
Well, because they're plants and they're growing things, they change. Just like us, they just change a little faster. I want the plants that make me the most happy. I want to keep them. And I do give away plants, like the 5 little kids with curly blonde hair. They live a couple of apartments away from me. They've always liked my plants when they come in. So I gave each one of them a little plant that I had like repotted, like a little jade plant or something.
That's awesome. It's fun too, whenever I'm talking to people and they're like, I need to do something. I don't know what to do or where to start. And then you just told me how you already started. Even just making that little progress is huge. And then we tend to complicate things because we start, in order to let go of plants, I have to decide which ones I want to keep. And I'm going to start by like the soil type and then the type of plant. And then maybe I do it by room. And then that's exhausting because we overcomplicate everything. But all you have to do is make one decision on one plant at a time. For example, the plant behind you, I know the answer to this, but the one that we can see there, is that one something that you're going to keep?
Yes.
Or you're going to let go? Okay, there you go. Final decision. That one's not going anywhere. and that's it. And like maybe you start with the closest to the door, but it really is just one decision at a time, not by soil type, not by room, just one item at a time. Before we get all into that, because I'm talking about ADHD here, you did not know if you had ADHD or not. That wasn't even part of my business at that point. But as you started to listen to the podcast, how did that help you understand yourself a little bit more? Do you think you have ADHD?
Yeah, I do, because it's an ongoing thing. I've been known to get up and go into the hallway and turn around 3 times because I wanted to get something from here. No, I needed to start that. No, I needed to do this. And then I just have to stop and focus. And like one of your guests was saying, having notes everywhere. I have whiteboards, one on my fridge, one on the door in my bedroom, and it just keeps me focused. And then I have like all these notebooks everywhere, like this notebook. So that helps me. But then, you know what happens? I have like 10 notebooks. That's where I'm kind of stuck. And I need help with figuring out what do I do with all these notebooks? How do I consolidate them? I mean, it's easy with the whiteboards because you can just erase them and write new things. But when you have so many notebooks with different things, like there's the medical, there's the plants, there's the apartment, it's a lot to keep track of.
I will say one thing that I did that helped me out a lot was designate one notebook that I wrote everything in. And I was not allowed to use any other notebooks but that one. I didn't necessarily have a purpose for it other than like sometimes I used it for a to-do list. Sometimes I used it for kind of a budgeting plan or to understand a goal or just to even make an outline of a coaching tool that I was trying to develop. So that's very helpful for me for my coaching notes and keeping backup. But I love the idea of having a notebook. So I bought one in Colorado about a year ago and I literally just used the last page yesterday. I don't think I've ever used a notebook from start to finish. And I was so excited to go and buy a new notebook yesterday. And I bought the coolest one. It's got little boxes all over it and things like that. But for me, it works because I don't need a notebook specifically for anything. If I'm trying to categorize something or keep it in a file, so to speak, I do have my digital notebook for that. They're remarkable. When you're taking notes, what are you typically taking notes for? What are you using the notebooks for?
Lists of different things. Well, for several things. I write down like the bills that I have to pay are in a notebook. And then I have a notebook that has plant stuff in it. And I have a notebook that I want to write in it every day, how I'm feeling and what I'm working on, what I did, because I don't always remember what I did. And so I have all these notebooks for different things. But are you saying that I could put all of that into like one notebook?
I think that you should find what works for you, like 100% of the time, because I'm not taking notes on plants. So there's a couple different things you could do. There are notebooks that are sectioned off that you could put little labels on. There are also, if you already have notebooks that you're using, I would encourage you to put a label on it, which is like,
that's a great idea.
Over label until you don't need the labels anymore. Like, because we do need the reminders. We have so many ideas, so many purposes in life. So if you have a plant notebook, put something. Do you have anything on there that says for plants?
No. And it gets mixed up with other notebooks too. So
if you're going to have separate notebooks, figure out what they're for and put a label on it. And then something that comes to mind here is like, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time. But we don't have time not to. Because if we don't stop and decide what we're using these notebooks for, then now they're scattered everywhere. We don't know which notebook is for what. And if we do have to refer back to something, now it's taking way more time because none of it is organized in a way that makes sense for us. So that's like a juggle that we have to face head on, because I see people are like, I don't have time to make a note and decide what this is, but also we don't have time not to. That is like this juggle that we're constantly dealing with. Okay, so with that information, what do you want to do? What do you think could work for you?
Well, when you started talking about that you have it in one notebook, I was thinking that would be perfect to get one of those notebooks that has different sections. And then, I can put something in the little tab and and just have one notebook and be able to scribble my notes on that.
Yeah.
And then another thing I also do, I use on my iPhone, the notes section. I use that a lot for everything, like grocery lists or just everything. But I also like writing things down with your hand.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for you to check that out. So where is some place that you often find yourself writing things down?
Yes, physically in my apartment and then anywhere, because I could be standing in the kitchen doing the dishes.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and I'll go to the refrigerator and write it on the whiteboard on the refrigerator. The whiteboard that I have in my bedroom is divided up and I've drawn a weekly section where I can write down, Monday through Sunday, what I'm doing what I need to do those days. And then I have a little list. I'm looking at it right now of different things I'm working on. And then I have what I need to do when I get up in the morning. I need to stretch and exercise. I need to drink my cherry juice and take my medicine and walk. So it's like a reminder that's just right there.
Fantastic. It's the first thing you see in the morning when you get up. And so it's right there as a reminder. Do you ever find that it becomes something you ignore?
Not so much because it's fairly new. I think I've had it up there maybe a month. And so it's a process. I only a couple of weeks ago did the calendar section or the weekly section of things to do and divided it up into, the first thing I did when I put it up was put up what I need to do every morning when I get up. Not that I always do it all, but it's right there for me.
Our phones can be really great. I
And
know
I have lots
the
of reminders
reminders
on my
app
phone
doesn't
too,
work for me, but when I set an alarm and I put a label on the alarm, that's very supportive to me. If it's like if I need to remember to drink water, can you share with us what was it like in your home before we started attacking the clutter?
I'm trying to remember. There's like before Brent died and after Brent died, like that's a defining moment in your life. So I was focused on him and being with him and making him feel comfortable. And so I ignored everything. And then before he got really sick, there was just a lot of stuff and he was attached to a lot of stuff that didn't mean anything to me. And I had plenty of my stuff to deal with. Like right now, my mom's silver service is in my closet and I'm going to get it down and use it. Just, why not? And then before we moved into this little space, the house we had that was bigger, in the basement, there was a storeroom that I had organized. And Brent would say, oh, I can tell when Carolyn's been down in the storeroom because everything is pulled out and opened up and just left there. And he would shove it back in and put it away. Yeah, there was just a lot of stuff that both of us were dragging around. And that's the part, like the taxes, that you need to get rid of, or the shirt that he was emotionally tied to things. Like he had a shirt that his daughter had given him 20 years ago. It was really beat up, but he was emotionally attached to it. I'm probably that way too. I have this nightgown. It's just a small, like rayon nightgown that my mom wore when I was a kid. And I just still have that.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Dana K. White is one of my favorite people talking about organizing. When I had her on the podcast, she was talking about something that her and her husband kept. I think we think that once we start letting go, that we have to let go of everything. We have to find a way to let go of everything. But it's more just the empowerment to make the right decisions for you in the moment. And just making a full decision so we stop putting it off, because we often delay the decisions, and that's why we've gotten ourselves into the situation in the first place. So now looking back after you've done the work, right? And you've come back to it, and then you've taken some time off. You've had a ton of other life events that have happened over these, last couple of years. Lots of babies. Yeah. With that in mind, how proud are you of all of this work that you've done?
Oh, really proud of it. But my kids, the two older ones, would call me a hoarder, and I didn't like that. I love containers. Remember when I sent you a picture of all the containers that I had? Do I really need all these? But yeah, I'm glad my mind has changed in how to deal with stuff. I may not have accomplished everything that I want to accomplish, and new things come in. It's just an ongoing process. But in my head, I can pull out what I need to work on. The thoughts, processes are there about what I need to do. And I have learned just in the past year with, I've had a lot of health issues besides the cancer that have like knocked me out for a little while, to give myself grace, like for right now, the boys' room, the second room you were talking about, I call it the boys' room because two of my grandsons used to hang out in there all the time. They're 18 now. So anyway, it's become a storeroom right now, and that's okay. I have plans for it. In my head, I need to move some plants in there for the winter, and I'm going to move some furniture around. And so I know what it can be, but right now it's storing a few things that I don't want to deal with right now. And I try to tell myself, it's okay. It's a process. You'll get there. And, like be at peace with what I'm doing right now in this moment.
Before we started working together, and I'm not just saying this was a lot of work that you did. This isn't just because you started working with me, but before we started working together, did you believe that you were capable of doing as much work as you have?
No, it was a muddle of confusion in my head, and it was overwhelming, especially the storage unit and all the stuff packed away in the tiny apartment. It was a jumble in my head. And after working with you, things are categorized and organized in my head. They may not be in my apartment, but I know what needs to be done.
No, it was so cool. Some of my fondest memories, I have the greatest picture of you sitting on the floor in the boys' room, going through your mom's jewelry and, color coding all of the books and figuring out what you wanted, making sure all your Stephen King collection was in one space and hanging up pictures in perhaps some semi-dangerous ways, but we made it work. I had so much fun working in your house with you. And, Carolyn has become such a friend. You came over to my house last year for Halloween and hung out with us. We catch up via Zoom now since I'm not in Colorado anymore. But I think, when you're going through this process with someone, it is very important to find someone that you feel really comfortable with because, that's another question I ask you. I think sometimes, people are scared to work with an organizer because they're like, I'm afraid that you're going to make me get rid of everything. And then I'm not ready to handle that. And that's really scary.
If there was something that you wanted to emphasize, you would reframe the statements you were making about those items. And that would help me to feel more comfortable and understand what I was doing.
We got here to Massachusetts and I'm like, why did I let that go? That's so ridiculous. And then there's other things that I kept that I'm like, why do I have this still? Please, we don't necessarily know the future, but do you regret letting go of all of the things?
Oh, no. No, I don't regret it at all. I'm so grateful that I don't have to think about that stuff. I mean, just think of all the stuff that you hauled off, outside on the front stoop. There was boxes of stuff.
I want to say that because it's important to know that we are going to make perceived mistakes as we let go and things that we wish we had again, but it's never a permanent thing. You can always replace a kitchen utensil. Yeah. I was working with another client this weekend. We were talking about the legs of a TV stand. And what if I wanted to put the legs on the TV again? We mounted it on the wall, but what if I want to take it off and put it on the legs again? But then that means I'm going to have to store it for 8 to 10 years, however long I have this TV. Do I want to be the person who keeps everything just in case? Or am I the type of person that trusts that I'll know what to do if that thing arises?
Comes up. Yeah, definitely. And that reminds me that legs to a TV. I don't think it was you. I think it was my son, Ben, because he's like all my kids are big thrower awayers. And we were putting a TV up or something, and there were all these parts left over. And I said, I wonder if I should keep them. And he just grabs them from me and says, no, you don't. Puts them in the trash.
And that is not something I would do. That is something that we save for our loved ones to do. And what sometimes makes it hard.
Yeah, my kids don't organize like I do. They're more, and I wonder if it's a generational thing because they aren't attached. Maybe it's the age. I don't know.
There are so many things that come up, and each and every one of my clients are so different in the way that, we hold on to things the way that we want to understand how to let it go. And I know with my parents, they're at the point, it hurts so much to move that it's hard to do anything. And since it is such a big project, well, why would you start? Because it is such a long process to get to the end of it. But it's also very emotional too. When you're letting go and when you're doing the work, that's not really having anything to do with what you're saying. But my point is that we all hold on to things and we let go in our own ways. And what's fascinating is that even when people come to me and they're like, oh, I just really wish so-and-so would let go of this more, they're saying that about this other person, but then as I'm working with them, they have their own things that they hold on to and their own things that mean a lot to them. It's just that they don't understand why they're holding on to it over here. So we all have these emotional attachments to things in our own way. But yeah, I do think as far as the generations go, things used to acquire value so much more. Things used to be what showed your worth, if you will, to a degree, right? Or they meant so much until we realized that we had so much, and then none of it meant anything because we had too much of it.
Yes. Yes. Think of all the dining rooms with big dining room tables and china hutches and all the china and silver and crystal that just aren't really a thing anymore. I still have a couple of sets of china that I need to get rid of. I mean, they're not in my apartment. They're in my daughter's garage. But letting go of that stuff because the value has decreased. Like 30 years ago, you could get more money for it. But now it's like you practically give it away.
Exactly.
It's just not. People just
like
don't
the
want
Beanie
that.
Baby collection that I had and always wanted to make a lot of money off of. It's fascinating how times change and it's different now. I just want to thank you for inviting me into your home and just allow me to see the process and to see, so I did it for myself, but to work with you one-on-one for so long from start to finish to see what that experience was like, to see you stop and then start again. Like you never gave up. No matter what life curveballs threw at you. And it's still happening, right? Now you're doing it with a different gusto than you had before. You now know how capable you are and that there is, like, you can live in a tiny home because you can absolutely let go enough to get to the point that you're living in a tiny home. And that's incredible.
Yeah. That I'm not so attached to things. I am more so than like some other people, like my kids, especially my sons, because they can just let go. But I've learned to be able to let go of those things and that they don't make me who I am. It's the memories are there. And so I don't have to keep a bunch of photos because my son, Steve, the one in that picture, scans all of this stuff that I've had, that I inherited from my parents, lots of photos. But then you can store them and put them right here in your room. And it just goes through and it just makes me so happy to like look at the pictures of my family and I can change it out. But that's an example of you don't have to keep boxes of photos. You can scan them, and then you can just let them go.
Yeah. Oh, I love
they don't have to physically be there because they deteriorate too.
Yeah, totally. And that's a whole nother project, right? Adding another thing to our to-do list, which is never ending.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's how life is. You're never finished. You're always, it's a process. Life, that's the way life is. You just go from like room to room in your house. You go from year to year in your life.
Yeah, beautifully said. Absolutely. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for being willing to be on a video podcast with me. When you're listening to this, send some kudos over here because what you have done is incredible. And also, being interviewed for the podcast is awesome too. So thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I love being here with you. It's just, you're such a great friend.
Right back at you. That episode reminded me not only of how far Carolyn has come, but how far I've come in my own journey and how each and every day we build off of what we've done the day before. These little actions that help us grow into the humans that we are today. Carolyn just turned 70 years old this year, and she has let go of so much in her life so that she is able to now dream of living in a tiny home, and she knows how capable she is of doing something like that. That is incredible. Because when you first start this journey, sometimes it feels like there's never going to be an end, and there's never going to be something, there's never going to feel like a goal that you can actually hit. And realistically, you can. It's about making those little changes every single day. Our brains are never going to change. We're always going to look at a situation from an all or nothing perspective. We're always going to look at it that way because that's just how we've been our whole lives. But when you start to notice this and you say, oh, I see that this is what my brain wants to do, and you pause and say, well, what can I do? What's realistic? What is one thing I could do? You start to reframe and take steps toward making changes and taking the teeny tiniest actions towards where you want to go. And I know that those teeny tiny actions don't feel like much, but they prove to ourselves that we can actually do it. And celebrating those little wins add up because it proves to ourselves that we can get back to it and we can build over time. I'm so glad to call Carolyn a friend. And I'm so proud to call all of you listeners and fans of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, because without you, I don't know where I'd be. I'm so grateful that you come in and you listen to my voice. My voice. I'm so grateful that you listen to the show each week and show up for yourselves, because that's really what this is all about. I've got some really exciting things coming. I do have... The membership will open again in January. There will be gift certificates on the website for the holiday season. So if that's something that you would like for whatever holiday you celebrate, I will continue to keep you posted on what that looks like. In addition to that, right now I have 2 openings for coaching in the month of November. If you're at the point where you have tried every single organizing trick and tip up your sleeve and it doesn't feel like it's working, please book a call with me. All you have to do is either email me, Megs, at organizinganadhdbrain.com, or go to organizinganadhdbrain.com/coaching, and you can book a call on my calendar right there. Get an idea if this is right for you so you can figure out what's next. And right now is the perfect place to start. And even during the holidays, yes, having a coach can help you so much understand what you can truly achieve and what makes sense to wait a little bit. I want to try that again. Having a coach through the holidays is an incredible tool to support you in understanding how much time you have, what your capacity is, and what you truly can achieve when you're trying to get from point A to point B. In this episode, I think I forgot that we were talking about the messy middle, because honestly, life is the messy middle. But also, you can do things. You can make plans and you can achieve them. And we can do that together. You can do that in community, or you can do that by continuing to listen to the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to Organizing an ADHD Brain. Just remember, I am not a doctor or a mental health professional. Everything I share here comes from my own lived experiences or my professional experience coaching other ADHD humans. If you need medical or mental health advice, please reach out to a licensed medical professional. What you hear on this podcast is for support and education, and how you use the information is completely up to you. For more resources, free downloads, and different ways to work with me, whether through coaching or the community, please go to organizinganadhdbrain.com. And don't forget, the perfect place to start is right where you are.